All right, so we're together for the next hour or so, 12 to 1, and so this is the community of practice, which is different than the training. The training goes 2 hours. I just wanted to. We're talking about recruiting employers for customized and carve jobs, and I just wanted to, and again, this is in my brain and if it's, if this is unclear, or if we don't talk about expectations, that'd be awesome. But I kind of would like the community of practice to be more, sharing, kind of interacting, more of like, I think trainings are more like not this the last word, but clear, like, okay, I'm trying to convey information to you. I've created kind of the trainings anyway, kind of a contained space of what we're focusing on. Community practice is similar in some aspects, but I think the focus is intended to be also that we learn from each other. So that's the community and community of practice. That we have these different topics to talk about and to look at, but it's not necessarily meant to be like me telling you what's what. If I can do that anyway, but more of like sharing some ideas and trying to have some interaction, some conversation, and that kind of stuff. That's okay, and it helps. As this project moves out, I think I'll definitely, as I come visit and spend time with you all in person, I will, some of the stuff that we're talking about, I will, learn, but until then, this is kind of my best method, I think, of figuring out where y'all are at. And I can send you a PDF of the PowerPoint. I have one. I don't want to waste time trying to. Let me see if I can attach the file real quick. Sorry, I'll do this real quick on my computer, and then I could maybe put it in the chat, and then you'll be able to just download it from there. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. My phone is blowing up. Okay, let's see if that works. Okay. It says it's sent successfully, so hopefully y'all can see it in the chat, and I think what you'll be able to do is pull it down to your computer from there. Okay, so today we're looking at recruiting employers for customized and carve jobs. I did want to start by just having a quick conversation about job carving. Hopefully I'll be able to explain how, the original title was like customized / carve jobs. When I do that in a sentence, what I'm meaning is two words that have very similar meanings. So I know job carving is in the definition of customized employment on, in WIOA, but I just wanted to just look at that real quick. You're welcome, Justine. And so I just wanted to ask you, like, when you think of job carving, what pops in your head right away? Could you guys type that into the chat? Like, job carving, what are some of the first things that immediately come to mind? Does that make sense? If somebody says the word carving, what comes to mind? Okay. Okay. So individualized job, tailoring your job to a person. Employers create a job for a person. Cool. Anybody? We got more people, right? Some more people add.
Okay, I'll talk.
Go for it.
Well, not that I cook or carve a turkey very often, but you take a portion maybe of that job and look at it as being part of a possible piece of the job that he or she can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know that etymology, if that's where like the history of the word, but I wonder if that's kind of where it came from. Like you said, cutting a turkey at Thanksgiving or whatever. Okay, cool. And then do any jobs come to mind, like specific carved jobs? So you guys are describing it more as a process, which is cool. Um, any jobs specifically that come to mind of examples of carved jobs?
I have a client that we did a job carving with at Noodles and Company a while back,
Okay.
where he would go in the morning and do the cleaning, which wasn't a position. They left the cleaning for him basically at the end of the night, and he would go in at 8 in the morning and sweep the floors and take the chairs off the table. And it only took him like an hour and a half to do, but it wasn't an actual position that they had. The dishwashing position wasn't working out for him, so we had kind of created that role for him.
Great. Okay. Cool. Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, Kendra.
Well, I had a client a while back, and we wanted to integrate what she was doing at a restaurant. She was folding silverware, but they also have banquets.
Uh-huh.
So, and that, didn't happen all the time, but maybe on a weekend or so she would go in and help with that. So you have two possibilities there.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. And so that, to me, I think my exposure, just being in different places and doing work, that is job carving to me. I mean, the most I see it is the rolling silverware only position. So that to me, and I just think that's also what I'm hearing. What I hear a lot when people refer to job carving, is that it's so kind of cut up and reduced to just one task. To the extent where I know I've interacted currently, like in current projects with organizations that are teaching this in their like activity center, teaching this skill, trying to anticipate, that this is a job they're going to create. And so what I want to make the point, and again, this isn't WIOA dogma or even my dogma. This is just, I would be, I wonder what the difference is between customized and carved. I think it's something worth thinking about. And I think my point of view is that they're not the same, that customized does not equal carved, carved does not equal customized. And I think they're both very valuable. I think that I would say maybe carved jobs are more a support employment tool, where customized job is closer to job creation, and then I think you probably have a bit of a range of what makes what depending on the qualities of how you got there and what the job looks like. So just in general, again, this is just, I'm sorry, some to start with, and these will be things, as we do the CIE, a competitive integrated employment training, and we're doing the customized training, and we're looking at a variety of ways of helping people create work I just think the terms can get confusing, and cause some confusion. So I think some hallmarks of customized versus what may not be in carved and vice versa would be what leads you to the employer business. Is it the person or is it the opening? And again, I think that as you get skilled at using these tasks, I think that you can, if somebody presents like a carved option, which would be pulling apart one or two tasks typically, I think that you could find a way to turn it into a customized job. The task conditions and hours, right? I think that carved jobs tend to have reduced hours in general, whereas at customized employment, the expectation is there's going to be multiple tasks and complexity, and it's going to be kind of, not the small job, not the little job, which I've heard people say, not anybody on this call, but just around. And so, the worry with like just the rolling silverware job, we would call that's like a fragile job, that if something happens to that task and it goes away, then the whole job goes away. And so, whereas a customized position, I think would have a variety of tasks, again, push more towards something that would resemble, part-time or full-time work, where you have multiple responsibilities. And then also the conditions of employment, that those are in consideration as you're designing the job. So I think that, I just thinking about fragility and job match, I think would maybe go more towards the person's driving it, not necessarily the need. And then, where's the job lead? So growth. One of the ideas behind customized job, and again, I think you can do both well. It's not that this stuff can never happen in a carved job or in supported employment. It should be happening. It's part of it. But that the job is a step towards something. Again, there's an idea of growth. I struggle with just the civil rolling job only. If it's not a step in a direction towards a more robust job. And then just the other thing, the idea of what's in a word, and again, this may be just semantics, but I do worry about carving. I think it has some similarities with making things reductive or simplifying things or lessening things. I think it can sometimes lead to the same place in the way we talk about it, again, in general, as like a label does, where it kind of, it is diminishing to some extent. So just, I just think, again, I don't know if there's a definition anywhere of what a carved job is versus customized. I think these are just kind of characteristics when we're talking about, well, is this customized or is it a job? I would call customized employment job creation. That's kind of job restructuring, where we're adding things and we're building something. I just think that, we're creating something versus like lessening. And I think, again, you can look at it from different ways and I think come to the same place maybe, but just food for thought there. Any thoughts about that? Okay. So, when we're, and I'd love to hear, and at the end, I want to hear, you told me some examples, but I'd love to hear kind of how y'all got there. And I think that, again, when we do community or competitive integrated employment, I think one of the main focus points is you always do what works, like you're always just do what works, and different approaches work for different people depending on where they're at, right? So, but I think there's something, if you're looking at the assumption behind a customized or a carved job is that, and we talk about this in a couple of the other trainings, is that it's not a, here's the job description, take it or leave it approach, right? So I think that's, when we think about how you recruit businesses, how you market to businesses, how you get them to listen, it's kind of, I think I shared the, what the question, what do you bring to the job? And the obvious, if you're hiring, well, I'm a new employee, I bring an employee, I bring myself. So it's somehow we have to get beyond that, we're hiring or in our response or put an application, put a resume, great. But then what, right? Then how do we have conversations that lead to places where we can have discussions about creating a job or pulling a piece of a job out and making something new or tailoring, these great language, and tailoring a job. I love that. The idea that, you're getting clothes and this is a new shirt I got for Father's Day and it's not quite tailored, but that you're making it fit, helping the job fit the person. So, how do we do that? And I think that now's an especially interesting time because, with the labor market being tight, I think everywhere or in a lot of places, there's a lot of, and again, apologize if I mentioned this before, but there's a lot of like, we're hiring, somebody who wants to work, great, just send them over, and we know that, especially if you have some information, you want to get some information about the job and our approaches, right? Typical approaches, you don't really know what the job is, go for it, right? See what happens. But in any of these approaches, if you're going to customize or carve a job, you got to know what the tasks are. And you have to have a process for, like you said, like going in the mornings and doing the cleaning or doing the banquet stuff, pulling apart or restructuring a job that fits the person. You can't just do that without understanding what the job is. And so right now what's happening, it seems like in a lot of places, like we're accessing businesses a lot easier than we used to because there's such a demand for employees or workers. But now it's kind of like, and businesses are saying, great, we'll hire them, send us the resume, but they still direct you towards that process. Or even if they don't, it's still, we did an informational interview last week with a young woman compared to me who hasn't really worked ever. And so we're at a point where it was like, just, it sounded like the business was saying, hey, come, he basically said, the job that we're talking about, like, we're just telling you the outline. The details are different. And that's what we were like wanting to get, is like the details. We need to get the particulars. But they're looking for people. So the supported employer, the person we're supporting, was like, oh, it sounds like you just want to give me a chance, and that's awesome. But what we know, the reason that people are receiving more powerful supports like customized employment or supported employment or other versions of competitive integrated employment is that going in not understanding things is just that the odds of it working out aren't super high. So I think that part of that conversation is like, can we slow this down? I know you want to put an application, or even you could say they could start tomorrow, but like if we don't know what the job is, like VR is not going to be happy to stick. They're not going to be cool with somebody burning through a few jobs like within this. That's what the process is for, is give us information. And there's another that's more of a placement version, right? Where if there's an opening, you go to the opening, you don't really know what's happening. Maybe you do some supports on the side. But so it's an interesting time now where we are trying to have conversations with businesses about, this is so wonderful, thank you. Could we have further conversations or talk about specifically, what your needs are, what actually happens here? So I think that, just figuring that out, how do you have these conversations with businesses to get to the point when you can actually propose a carved job or propose a customized job is interesting now. It's just, it's interesting how the economic circumstances change. And then the other thing about, I think, customized or carved jobs, I just think maybe the difference are, again, the skills are first and they lead to the needs more often than not, as opposed to needs. You find out needs first lead to skills, because we're typically doing individualized job development in customized employment. Carved jobs could go either way, I think, in terms of, if you're doing kind of job development for groups, looking for people or hiring, trying to kind of reverse engineer that. But I think that, again, when you think like you all are thinking of carved jobs, how you described it, I think that if you add complexity, and you're not, I just, like, again, the rolling silverware, I'm just curious, sometimes I think we're teaching things that based on the need, but not necessarily, they're driving the skills, if that makes sense. But I think that skillfully you can do both. And then the last part, I think, with both, if those of you that have seen Glenn Ross, I think is what it's called, but know your ABCs. And I think that is that there is a process of us, ABCs is always be closing, is like the sales term there from that great movie. That there is, even though we're not saying that we're marketers or hardcore sales people, well, we are marketers. We're not saying we're hardcore sales, like high pressure salespeople. We want to, when we're doing both customize and carving, we do need to, I think a hallmark of both these processes is that we influence the entire process, right? That we are finding ways to make our impact felt, whereas jobs that are just the job description, nothing else, just things are out of our hands, and we really struggle with figuring out how to help people navigate those processes. So I think, again, I think that those are, when we're thinking about customized or carved jobs, these are things that we're trying to figure out. Any questions about that? Okay, great. And again, we're not, the idea behind this is that most time, if we're working with somebody in a customized or carved job, if we need to individualize or tailor the job around the person, there's been a decision. It's not ours necessarily. It's a team-based decision. The reason that people are receiving these types of supports or services is because there's a recognition, either based on past experience or how people that know the person well, that it's unlikely that just a job as it is going to work. So I hope that doesn't, like, we're not saying we're forcing people or coercing people to do this, to not take a job as it is. It's just that it's been identified, if you're in customized employment, if you're receiving supported employment that's highly individualized, there's a recognition, somehow a decision made that this is the most appropriate service, the service that will most benefit the person. So you're going to see this. This is, I share this with, anytime we're talking about businesses, I show this in every training. Again, it's just a really good description of the traditional hiring process, the competitive in a comparison sense hiring process. And so, customized and job carving or support employment, they recognize that a lot of businesses hire like this, right? Use this kind of highly HR driven process, which is job posting, interviews, applications, that kind of stuff. But they understand too that that you have to exert your influence to somehow find if you look at the first is the job posting, people see it, and then it kind of goes through the different qualifications, I guess, that people have as they kind of pass through each section until they have the job at the end, second interview, all that kind of stuff. And so what the job carving or customized approach, individualized approach would say that we have to find a way at some point in this process to exit it, or if we're still in the process, we have to essentially alter it so much that people are, that the process doesn't look like this anymore, that somehow there's attention given to the app, if you're applying using this process, or the employment seeker, that they're not being considered with these typical ways anymore, if that makes sense. So essentially, any type of approach that's highly individualized, you're going to exit this process at some point. What customized employment would say is that we don't even want to even do this at all. Like we want to do as much as we can, to not even engage this process, to have an alternative process to circumvent this completely. And different other approaches, would engage in pieces of it, depending again on the level of supports and the person kind of skills, where they're at in the match. So, and again, this is what we get paid for. So I wanted to share a couple of recent examples. So a guy we're working with in Michigan, let me know if you can't see anything or if I'm talking too fast or something. So this, the transportation was a theme. And I should say that, when you see that inverted pyramid, the obvious way to circumvent that, the only way really is through, you have to talk to a human being. You have to talk to somebody who has power to alter that process, right? So it comes down to like two people, just a relationship, should be, whether you create that relationship or you're leveraging an existing relationship. Somehow you have to get the person who's in that process, who kind of gatekeeps that process, to listen to you and to talk to you about trying an alternative. But this is kind of an example of, I think you got to think about like what type of employer you're approaching. We talked in one of the earlier trainings, there's like governmental businesses, nonprofit, probably co-op, and then private, and then within each, there's small to large, there's a lot of variations. This was a business, when we did discovery, the employment seeker, he spent a lot of time like taking pictures of buses, and he had a really good experience, like the bus driver when he went to, and he's not too far out of secondary or school. In Michigan, you can go pretty long, but he had a really great relationship with his bus driver. Kind of had become like a transportation assistant a little bit, on his bus. He would hang out there, he took pictures. So there was kind of like a transportation, maybe logistics theme, an art theme with the photos. And we had a couple other themes, but so so the problem, of course, we hadn't ended, and the VR counselor hadn't into the director of transportation at this school district. And so, you know, again, this is when we were talking to them, you know, the director of transportation is like, she's really powerful in transportation, right? But there's somebody else that does the hiring for the entire school district, right? She doesn't do only the hiring for, she doesn't control completely the hiring for transportation. Somebody else is involved in HR. And so the VRC was able to pull some strings to help us kind of navigate some of the earlier, you know, the restrictions that would happen with an application for the gentleman we're working with who doesn't have tons of work history. Was able to get kind of a conversation versus a traditional interview. And then we were able to submit we call it a career profile. It's kind of an alternative to a resume for folks that a resume, and I may have showed this to you during one of the other trainings, just it's kind of resembles, it's closer to a resume than a representational portfolio or a visual resume, if you've seen those in PowerPoints. But it's just another way to get to know the person in a way that we think is going to be more strengths-based with pictures, and it has some nice formatting and describes a bit of discovery. And it's stuff that kind of may not fit, and also previous work history or responsibilities, stuff that may not fit in traditional resumes. But when we got to the, when we got to the job description, a few things stood out. So one of them was if you, and this isn't the bus isn't just for students with special needs, but that stood out there. Not that part, but this one down here, responsibilities shall include but not limited to, number 9. Apply safety restraining devices as requested and authorized by the building principal and or physical occupational therapist. So essentially it's saying you may be responsible for restraining people, which we didn't, when we talked, that didn't really come up. And trying to get information as to, well, how often does something like that happen? Spencer couldn't remember that ever happening, when he was kind of helping out when he was in school. But it was just kind of part of where we're stuck right now is like, we're Spencer's not sure about that. And part of our conversation before we saw that was thinking, well, what's your role going to be? You're probably going to be, you're kind of responsible for discipline, right? You may be the heavy because the driver, has got to focus on the road, right? So what's a really good day look like? Like you're helping people out, making sure everybody has what they need, maybe, and what are the age ranges? None of that is really on here. And then you think, okay, what's a good day? Everything goes, but what's a bad day? And how often so a bad day probably is like, I don't like somebody gets sick. And then as you can look at it, help driver keep inside a bus lane, you're probably responsible for that, Does the, if there's a fight breaks out, right? I don't know about you, but I remember going on school buses, there's a lot of bullying that happens. Those aren't the best, work environments. Also the bus drivers, they tend to be really, they're great people, but they tend to be really, they're not wanting to interact with the kids a lot while they're driving, really, my sons tell me that, why are bus drivers so mean? It's not, they're just like, things have to be like this when they've got 20 kids on a bus. So where we're at now is we're struggling because the transportation director, things went good there, but she needs to go ask permission from somebody else that we don't know. And what we're not sure, we don't, in our approach, it's not a good idea for the person we're serving to take the job, not quite understanding, how frequently all this stuff would happen. And so there's a process of us wanting to check some things out, right? To verify what a day looks like, right? What a week looks like. And I know, you will never be able to get 100% complete information, but let's say that the person we're serving doesn't want to, say that the restraints, that stuff doesn't work for him. it's gonna, you can carve that part out, probably, I don't know, that could be pretty tough. And then there's issues of, timing and the shifts and all this other stuff that we've learned later. So again, just kind of a process of how much information can we get and how much time does it take to do that kind of detective work to figure out the match, right? Does that make sense? And I think that when we're trying to carve or customize a job, I think we had a relationship, but the relationship was within a kind of a big bureaucracy. There were some worries about doing that. We thought, the person with the relationship thought that she could, circumvent that, but it seems like we're not quite sure where that's going to go. And then I want to just compare that with another approach. So there's a potato chip company, and this is in Michigan. And so if you scan this or read this, basically you're going to see that Nikki, names have been changed and stuff, that the person they went to talk to about the business, they use more of a kind of informational interview approach, were able to talk to them prior to saying, do I want to apply here? And they got some pretty cool information. So Nikki, and she was young, just out of college when they interviewed her, and she's, their family owns the company. They've been in business for 40 years. Somebody recently this is a cool potato chip company. Somebody in South Dakota just turned in an informational interview where they did an informational interview at a rubber band gun business. I don't know if you guys know that business, but that was in South Dakota. So just some really interesting types of businesses. She's proud that they've been running the business that long and continue to grow and make improvements to the product. She's passionate about making this company the best it can be. She's happy to be involved with their small team of employees and continue to come up with ideas to expand the company. I hope you don't mind me reading this too, but she mentioned they'd love to expand the product line even further. As of now, they make and sell 5 different varieties of potato chips and some caramel corn. They sell the product in some smaller local grocery stores and gas stations, as well as 40 different Kroger stores and 3 Meijer stores right now. They're reaching out, they're doing some sales and stores and gas stations to sell. They also have a small storefront. These are the flavored chips, asking about what are they not offering, but they like to. Flavored chips that customers ask for they don't offer. Cheese flavored, they didn't sell well for dill pickle jalapeno. Nikki mentioned that they work in teams. Again, we're getting a sense of, like, this is just from probably talking, we asked for 20 minutes, ended up being an hour or more, but we're trying to get a sense of how things work there. And so with the previous one, the employment seeker had his own experience as somebody who rode the bus, but that's a different experience and helped out too as a student, but different experience than being a paid employee. Inspecting the potatoes, machinery, driving and shipping, receiving and driving and delivering the products. Shared that they also develop training programs and videos, help give pamphlets out with the training info all new employees. They have a difficult, and then you're looking at needs and maybe how you help. Nikki mentioned that currently have a difficult time producing as many chips as larger companies due to the fact they do a lot of work by hand. They have some machinery to help, but most of the work is still done by hand. It slows down the process. She mentioned getting new technology to help with production would cut the amount of time it takes to make the products and would make the job easier on the employees. Okay, so, and then, they talked a bit more about how bigger factories are automated. They have done some technology in the last few years. It does help. And also people, machine breaks down, they have to fix it. The guy they were doing, this is a different person than the previous person. He has worked with machinery is a theme of his, like working, he's worked in a metal pressing shop and was actually pretty skilled at, he has a vision impairment, was really skilled at hearing when a machine didn't sound right, and then they'd work on it, him and the team would work on it, try to fix it. So new piece of equipment, teach everybody how to do that. Also talk about social media, again, technology, if somebody has a technology theme, a website, Facebook, they're doing TikTok, which I'm super interested in. A lot of the younger folks are using that and marketing it very well. Detroit News, and then describes how they had met in a virtual meeting at the chamber. It's cool. And then they talk about how they weren't able to go look in the back because they were remodeling and couldn't really get around, too unsafe to be back there at a time. But the employment specialist had seen it during the Zoom meeting. Let's see, other thing I want to show you. They were talking about the scheduling. The person is like really wanting to work full time. I think his team is a little concerned about how that would work. It doesn't, right away they're not sure, but over time I think it would. And then I think the last part I wanted to show you. So they do, this is again the kind of thing where it's like, hey, we'll hire you maybe, but having these processes, understanding that jumping into that may not work out so well. That doing that without information is not an approach that works. And so, so she also liked that Keith could said that by sound. And then I may not have put it in there. There was a line. They did ask about coming in and trying things out and like exploring. I may have taken that out. Facility. Sorry. Well, there was a point. I must not have. Anyway, sorry. I did not copy that, but there was also, I think that's one of the cool tools, and we've talked about here that if there's the signs of a good match, there are tools that we can use, whether it's OJT or work tryout or whatever you call it. If you can, and that's part of the negotiation with a business is can we come in and really verify the match, right? Verify the task fit, verify the environment fits, the culture fits, right? It's not random. Again, we've come talk to you, we've done some version of assessment, whether it's discovery is alternative or another version to find the job goal. We're here because it makes sense based on what we've learned so far, but we still don't know enough about the particulars of the business to say, hey, this job is a job match, right? And so, when we're trying to recruit businesses or employers to participate in these more individualized approaches, the key word is match, right? And not guessing at a match or not making match assertions based on speculation or hints, but actually doing stuff to verify our thoughts about that. So, and so I just two examples I wanted to show you of just, the one example being, and again, thinking of when we're thinking of businesses that we're likely to recruit, to reach out to, that are willing and able to do customized jobs or job carving. I just think it is important to think about, in customized employment, we talk a lot about small businesses, going to small businesses, because the assumption in customized employment, you're going to have to do a pretty intensive individualization, right? I mean, customization is like the furthest version, where ideally you're creating a wholly new job. And maybe you're building some tasks that didn't exist before because you're offering a new product or service based on resource ownership. And so we understand that there's going to be certain probabilities about businesses that will be able to do that and businesses that won't. And so I just think it's important to, we're going through this now with the school district because there was a relationship that people thought could disrupt in a good way, the HR process. And just a reminder, it's all of us, and that relationships can't do that, but some of these HR systems are pretty strong, and they have a really hard time doing things that are different. Okay, cool. So, so when we're doing, again, and we've seen this one before too. I just think this works for generalized, business networking, and I think it also works obviously for customized and carved jobs. And I think thinking about who you want to target for each, right? That certain businesses you'll learn work well, for the placement version. Maybe certain types of businesses or individual businesses, maybe you'll get to know them and they'll over time work well with customized approaches or carved approaches. But I just think that it is, there has to be a plan. There's got to be some kind of, I think, approach towards, how are you getting these businesses or employers to spend time with you? And so as we saw before, I think there's immediate stuff you can do, kind of middle range stuff you can do, and then long-term stuff you can do. Talking with folks over the COP and the trainings, it seems like some of the stuff is happening. But we really, as we move forward with the project, and one of the things that, I really love to use the COP for, and I know we have the agenda kind of spelled out for the year, but it'd be really cool as I get to know y'all and spend time with you, to maybe refocus on some of these. We've talked about recruiting employers for customized carve jobs, talked about maybe just be it'd be great to have like a follow-up COP, and we'll do like individual trainings when I'm talking to everybody, but individually, but it'd be great to have a follow-up COP where people are sharing what they're doing, what's working, maybe some of these strategies that they're implementing, or maybe other strategies that they're implementing, to try to make sure things work. Okay, so just a couple of other, when we're thinking about, these are, I'm not going to go through these right now, or use these as an exercise. I just wanted to show you some tools that, again, the customized employment approach we use. But these are not just for customized employment. I think, when we think about marketing and we think about talking to businesses, they can be adapted to whomever the audience is. But I think, that depending on the person that you're working with and the approach you're taking and your intent when you're talking to businesses or chamber or Rotary or whatever, I just think it's really important to think about how you're going to answer that question of what do you do, and how you're going to do that in a succinct way. And you're going to do it in a way that makes sense to who the audience is. And I think this question, we've gone through this, at some form, it all boils down to, people who have skills and you want to match them with businesses that have needs, right? Like, however you want to say that, like, hey, I work with a lot of people who can do stuff, and I know a lot of businesses that need stuff done. I'm trying to bring them together. I'm a broker or however you want to describe that, a facilitator. Like we want to help businesses be better businesses. And I know people can be good employees. But it just, again, I think that I think that's the core idea. But again, if you say that to a business that's just hiring, they may be like, great, we'll hire that person tomorrow, send us somebody tomorrow. And you may have, if you're working with a pool of people, like most people are, you probably have one or two people or maybe more that would work for. But there's also going to be others where that's just not going to work, right? That the conversation, the what do you do question probably needs to be modified a bit to reflect the person that you're having in mind, depending on the approach. Any questions about that? Okay. Would anybody like to share how they, like, what works for them when they're, what do you do, or how do you adapt it or adjust it depending on who the audience is?
Well, since this is my first customized employment client, it has, of course, we've been through COVID and now the reopening and people wanting to hire anybody, right? But
Yeah.
I can't do that with my client. I mean, I could probably get him a job at Burger King, McDonald's. We have a new McDonald's opening here soon, and that is just not something he is interested in. I think his guardian is interested in him working there, as I spoke with her the other day. But I try to explain to her what customized employment is, and she understands, I guess, but she is anxious, as is my client. And I have seen quite a few people, a lot of it calls over the phone asking them, can I come in and see them? And most of that, no cold calling, just walking in, not yet, but I'm getting close.
Yeah.
I am, because it's a tough situation for us to find that perfect job.
Yep, and you're still in discovery too. So the other thing I want to make sure that people, what I'm talking here is, this stuff is after discovery. So it's when, I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
I don't know. A lot of it's what I'm doing now. You know, asking questions. What do you do? And I don't know. I just find it difficult now.
Yep, difficult to get people to talk to you because of just being open to the public,
No,
or people just wanting to hire,
Yeah,
people.
just wanting to hire.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, I'm sure if you reflect, you probably maybe during the 2000s, like or the late 90s, there was a time, if you did this work then, where it was like this. But it's been a while since that conversation where businesses are like, hey, I'm in, I'll hire the person. And again, that'll work for a lot of people, but a lot of people we're working with, that's just not going to work for. And the informational interviews are a part of discovery. So yeah, a lot of these questions are the same. Of trying to learn about businesses. We use the same approach, just learning about businesses during customized job development. So cool. Anybody else want to share? Okay. So just a couple of other tools. I had this in the last training, but did not. I don't think we got to it. Again, we use this in the customized employment training, but using all types of training. These are just general, this is a marketing tool that just, to think about, how to talk about yourself, but also, when we create the, which we'll show you later, we create the career profile. This is essentially the logic of it. Is that if you we're in, this slide's supposed to be from your employment agency perspective, like when you're marketing your involvement. What do? You do some version of discovery or some version of getting to know. You pre-screen employment seekers, right? So that when the employer meets them, they know they're meeting quality people, right? So they don't have to do that part. Some type of negotiation or matching or making sure that the job fits. That's kind of job development, right? How does that benefit the employer? Well, they get somebody who can do the job, right? They don't have to guess at that, or they get actually another layer of kind of scrutiny there in a good way. Then job coaching to follow along, all that kind of stuff. And then if you look at like past, resource ownership, the idea is like, here are all these things that this person or you as an organization or the person as an employee, potential employee can do. And you always, again, this, but you always have to describe, right, like what's in it for the business, right? And I don't mean that from a crass way, but sometimes I think we use language, that misses the business point or the employer point. And so I think sometimes when we're highlighting how awesome a person or that when we had the interview in the young woman, or the woman was like, just give me a chance. So he's going to give me a chance. That's not kind of, that chance is risky. That's not necessarily, if you think of what that literally means, give them a chance, that means you're telling the business to take a risk. And of course they are always taking a risk whenever they hire anybody. But the point of us being involved is that we are, we're going to help people mitigate that risk to the greatest extent possible. So give them a chance is kind of a step back from that. Like, we know what we're doing and we want to help you design something that works. So I just think, when we're thinking about any kind of marketing materials and again, marketing, how do you recruit businesses? The focus needs to be on, what is specifically to the business, how they're going to benefit or the employer, whether that's our involvement or obviously hiring somebody good. And I just think, again, thinking about how do you market that broadly, how do you market it specifically to recruit businesses, untapped labor market, workers with disabilities. Like, I'm just not sure. I mean, that's obviously true. I'm just not sure that language like that is effective in getting businesses or employers to act, right? If you're going to talk like that, I think like we said before, you need to switch pretty quickly to a specific story about a person that you're working with, where you can highlight what you mean and get away from generalizations and kind of abstractions or labels. So this is just one of my, I think I've shown these, one of my favorite slides. It does have the S word in it, but you guys seem cool. But I've just, when you think about how you talk about when we're recruiting businesses, like, again, we often talk about, well, we do job coaching and we do job development and assessment and skills training, and that's great. But when we're speaking to a business, they don't care about that stuff. They want to know, what does that mean for them, right? So it'd be like those of you that grew up playing Mario, if traditional or kind of our versions, we would describe the fire flower, had green petals and pretty red thing in the middle. It's about as high as Mario, but nobody really cares about that because that's not really what we're selling or we're marketing. What we're selling is the actual, the function, right? What the flower does, right? So, and that's awesome person can do rad stuff, right? So you're, instead of describing the flower, describing job coaching, we want to describe what it means for the business, right? Again, job match, quality work, why does this job particularly fit this person? Why is it's basically why is the employment seeker awesome, or why are we awesome when we're talking about trying to get businesses on board? Okay, so the other two are just some, again, skills, or just some thinking tools to think about when we're going to reach out to businesses. And you can do this on your own. If you look up exchange theory, is just the idea of why do two entities come together in a relationship. The assumption is they want to maximize rewards and minimize costs. Again, we're recruiting businesses. One of the things, a cost to a business is like, this is weird, like, like we're having these conversations. I don't usually have this conversation. Like, is it worth it? Is it worth the time and effort? Does that make sense? Like, I just think that, we offer free services to businesses. Some of the stuff that we can help people do can be extremely valuable to the bottom line, but there's some kind of cost of, even if it's just psychological cost of like, I'm having a new conversation, and this is weird and different in terms of like, I've not hired somebody, I've never done job carving or customized employment. How do we help recruit people and businesses to help show them, that this is, that they're going to benefit, in a very good way and minimize those costs. Yeah, these conversations are a pain in the butt and they're annoying. But if I can show you a vision of the future of what this could look like, based on the little I know now, and I want to learn more, I really think it'll be worth everybody's time. And that ultimately is the value proposition, right, in business. And so just, these are just some silly exercises. If you think about, well, why did Disney and Star Wars come together, right? Why did Disney buy Star Wars? And if you think about the pros and cons to each, you can kind of see like, why is it rational, right? Why did they do that? And then again, if we had in a full training, we could go through this and help you work through it. Or Amazon or Whole Foods. Why did Amazon buy Whole Foods? When you research that or look into it, you can see there's very logical reasons why these two businesses, why Amazon bought Whole Foods, and how they each mutually benefit, right? How they are both amazing things that can do rad stuff, Okay. Okay, cool. So could I ask, I did want to ask, we don't only have 5 minutes left. I want to ask those of you that have done carved jobs or customized jobs, how did you get out? So one of the ones was, I think Melissa, you were saying, or somebody was saying he was doing dishwashing, that didn't work out, I think, and then he did cleaning. So it's a problem solving, like after a job started. So that's one way. It's not, you didn't intend that, I'm assuming. It was just you did a good job supporting the person. There was a problem, you proposed a solution. If you do it from the start, what are some ways you can get out of that like job description HR approach to then get to a carved job or a customized job? Does that make sense? Those of you that have done it, like how did you do that? If you don't mind sharing. Anybody?
Okay, Russ.
All right,
Melissa. Before back up a little bit here. And Jordan, also maybe you can help out on this. When you said verify, let's say that I have a business that I've already seen, and in fact, it's a popcorn place. And she was interested, but she hasn't come forward and said, yes. But I would definitely go back and see her and see maybe if we could verify, let him come in for whatever, for a week or two. Jordan, is this going to be the same as a situational?
So going to just kind of try it out and see if it works out in the carved situation. Am I understanding your question correctly?
Yeah, it seems to be right, Melissa. You're saying that you have an idea based on what you know that what they're doing there may fit the person, but obviously, but you're not sure. Yeah, there's still some questions.
I think that would be an appropriate use of a situational. I mean, obviously you're going to want to talk to your counselor about that. I mean, that's my counselor brain and my policy person brain, and that makes sense to me. You know, always good to talk to the counselor because they know the person best and the individual like scenario. But I mean, I would say if you guys as a provider had like, hey, I think this scenario and this carved position might work out for a client, but we need to know this, this, and this before we know if it's going to work. I think that's a very appropriate use of situationals.
Well, I like that word, and I am going to use it on more of my businesses that he might fit and I come across.
Yeah. I think it can also be used well. I thought there was another word too that you all had, another, like people can try some stuff out. I don't know if it's job tryouts like in Ohio, but we looked at it one time, but there are tools that people can use to get their hands dirty, you know, whatever you want to call it. I think Melissa, it can be a wonderful tool. Sometimes I think I mentioned this, oftentimes like there are tasks, you know, hey, this really fits the person, you know, awesome. But you want to help somebody create a job where they're going to learn and grow and develop new skills, you know, I just think sometimes we miss that, is that we're always job developing the next job based on the last job. And if we look at our careers, like we're typically always growing and expanding and looking to learn new stuff and take on new responsibilities. And I think sometimes we're so worried about it not working out that we don't take some chances on helping the person grow a bit. And we know that we need to do that to help the person the next time, you know, when they are ready to move on to the next job and have that career arc that we all have. I think that can be, Melissa, a great idea. So there's the tasks, you know, the person can do pretty much, you know, and there may be some stuff like, well, this is a different environment. We got to verify that. And then, but there's typically tasks you're like, you know, I think this could work, but maybe I've only seen people, like there's a guy I worked with who changed tires at home, you know, with his dad, and they had a tire changer, but it wasn't an industrial or commercial one. And there was a business, they had a commercial tire changing machine. It was much different, you know, same basic principles, but much different in terms of complexity of operation. I couldn't make the logical leap that since you did this at home, you could definitely do that here. But I felt like, hey, that's a good shot, but I don't want to just guess at it. Nobody wants to just guess at it. Let's like verify it. So then there's those middle ones where you're like, I think this could work, you know, but I'm not exactly sure. There's some I know can work. And then there's the other tasks at the other side. They're like, you know, I'm not sure, but it would be really cool, you know, in terms of career growth, if you could take on some of these new, maybe more unique or I don't know what the word is, foreign, and I mean that in a way that he's just not maybe spent a lot of time around them. Maybe we didn't know about these tasks, but they're somehow related back to what we've learned about them. But we need some time to do some teaching and some exploration. Does that make sense? I just think that's a cool tool to really piece together. And that's why I'd say, well, maybe you're going more towards customized because you're piecing many tasks together versus carved, which again slices. And again, that may be just semantics, but I think, Melissa, it's a great tool, again, to verify.
New messages. Message received.
Some of that may work.
31. Hi, Jill. It's Carrie. I am just responding.
I'm hearing somebody's messages. Oh. Cool. Any other? So Melissa, and the way you do that then is you somehow got to know the owner of the popcorn place, or and so they got to know you, so that you would have to have the conversation with them about, hey, we know that maybe you've not done this before.
But my client went with me.
Yeah.
He was with me. And
Cool.
that's all he has talked about since
Cool.
we've been there. And you talk about, you know, growth so that he doesn't work himself out of a job.
Yeah.
I see that he will grow. I mean,
Awesome.
customer service, working with products, and I know that I'm only at a certain stage in the customized employment. And
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
Cool. Well, sometimes, and we haven't talked about this, but sometimes jobs do come out, it was not intentional, but just a nice byproduct. But the worry would be jumping to something without knowing all the answers, but there's ways to find the right questions to answer those. But okay. Did you know the owner of that business before you reached out?
No.
Okay, cool. So you created that on your own. Great job. Okay. Anybody else we're over time, but anybody else feel the urge to share how they've maybe got to a carved or customized job? got around the HR kind of stagnation, you know.
I just want to sneak in there that the code word for the attendance sheet is summer.
Okay. Cool. All right, well, and that's that, as they say. All right, well, thanks everybody for your time and attention. I really appreciate it. And I've got a 1 o'clock meeting. I'm a few minutes late for it. But... All right, see you guys. Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks, everyone.